we may finalize on what we started on our previous lesson. I was on my way to the field to go and do some few exercises, run up and down, make my body fresh, make my soul fresh, and make my spirit fresh once again. But I remembered that there is something I need to discuss with my online student. We are going to finalize on what we said yesterday. So even you, where you are, please kindly, each and every day, set aside some few minutes for physical exercise so that you refreshen up yourself. Some of you, they only run when they're being chased by a dog. That you can still run on your own. No one will mistake you with a mad person. So remember what we said the other day. I said that we have 8 nature of questions that can be asked in physics. And we've discussed in our previous video. If you have not seen it, you can still just go back and search for it in the Facilitation of Physics Part 1. Now we are in Part 2. We've talked of state, we talked of the define, we talked of a describe question, and we discussed numerical questions. And I gave you an assignment. I believe you did the work. Now, I want us to continue. We have very few remaining, 4 remaining, but we are going to move with them very fast. So now, I want us to start with what we call differentiate type of questions. Differentiate type of questions. So in this case, when you're asked to differentiate, you need to know actually the mind of the examiner. You need to know and read what was the intention of the examiner in that given question. Differentiating is giving contrasting features or giving contrasting qualities or factors of 2 different maybe they can be instruments, they can be 2 different maybe physical factors, and by the end of the day, someone who is reading through your work should have known the difference. Now, there are 2 ways you can give your difference. For example, if I ask you to give me a difference between heat and temperature, look at this, then you choose where you belong. We have this. A student will do this. Heat, temperature. Look at that. Heat and temperature. The student has drawn a table. The student is going to tabulate the difference. Then, that is now another different type of a student. Then we have another one here, who will give in terms of number form. Look here. There are 3 ways we can differentiate heat from temperature. For example, SI unit is joules. SI unit is Kelvin. Then the student moves to the next point. This one, the student has to look for a word to join the 2. The SI unit of heat is joules. The SI unit of temperature is Kelvin. In a statement form, look for a statement to join the 2. So you give a difference. And this one now doesn't comes out well to a student. For you to qualify to get a whole mark here, the difference must be true. Or that is, if you tell us now the SI unit of heat is joules, then you tell us the SI unit of temperature is degrees Celsius. Even if you have it right concerning the heat and you have it wrong concerning the temperature, then you will not score it. Unless the whole of it is true, you will not score it. So please, this one is not for guesswork. If you have to differentiate, you differentiate. The other way to differentiate, I'm not here to teach you but to give you the skill, but now because we are talking about heat and temperature, we can give the difference full. The other way is when you define heat and you define temperature, it is a way of also differentiating it. Heat is a form of energy that flows as a result of temperature difference. Then now, because it is in a tabular form, you get to the other side, then you write that temperature is the extent of hotness or coldness of a body or a place. So you see, that one is fine. But if you are using the one here in form of a point form, then you have to tell us that whereas heat is a form of energy that flows as a result of temperature difference, temperature is, then you give us its definition. That is how it should be. The other way you can use to differentiate, apart from what is heat and what is temperature, the third way to differentiate heat from temperature is how they are measured. Temperature has a specific way of being measured by instrument. Heat cannot be measured directly by instruments. That is it. In fact, if you want to get heat, unless you get other factors, then you calculate it. You can calculate it in very many ways. Like how I discussed in the quantity of heat. Heat is calculated by, if it is electrical method, we work with VIT, that is heat in joules, or mass times the specific heat capacity times change in temperature, that is heat. So there is no specific way we can measure heat. That is it. So that is when you are required to differentiate. Also, close to a differentiate type of a question is a comparison question. You compare. And you know, comparative in English, we have to use comparative words. You can be given a very simple question. For example, an examiner can decide to ask you, why do we prefer to use alcohol as the thermometric liquid in a very cold weather than, compared to the use of mercury? So in this case, you have to compare the two. What makes alcohol to be used in countries, in winter countries, as a thermometric liquid is the fact that alcohol has a lower freezing point than mercury. So because it's a comparative question, you need also you to understand the question very well. If it's a comparative, please let the examiner see a comparative language in your work. More than. You see, that's a comparative language. Alcohol has a lower freezing point than mercury. You will score it. But just telling us it has a lower, it has the lowest freezing point, then what? What are you comparing with? So make sure you use a comparative language when the examiner wants you to compare. It is still a form of a differentiation type of a question, but in a comparison way, you compare between the two. Right now, we are not comparing heat and temperature, but like alcohol and mercury, you have to compare for you to score it. Why do we prefer the use of glass prisms over mirrors when reflection is needed? Use a comparative language. So try to look for more questions that requires you to, give the difference, or you compare the two. Someone can also still ask you, why is it that we prefer the when you are trying to find the polarity of a magnet, we prefer repulsion other than what we call the attraction. So you are supposed actually to compare between the two. Let's move on. That is the comparison and differentiation type of a question. as usual, your assignment is just now to go and check on more questions on the same. I said, if it happens that you cannot answer that question, please, I always provide my details. I always provide my details. Just as for me, I will assist you. That is it. So if you have to, maybe you are somewhere, you are stuck. I said it yesterday, you are a government project, and you are being owned by the government. So I will, and we are the government officers, so we will assist you. You are actually ours. Now, the other one is that we can look is what we call the explain type of a question. Explaining is a sister to state, because in most cases, after stating, you explain. You state, then you explain. Others, and I like this one, others, we explain, we state for you, then you explain. And I know students are against this because when we state for you, for example, when we state for you the observations that you're supposed to see, then we ask you to explain. After explaining, we will give you less marks. But stating and explaining are 2 marks. One for stating, the other one for correctly explaining the statement. Now, if I state for you, then you explain, you will get 1 mark. So, for example, when you want to test, or when you want to find out that when water or any other liquid is heated, it expands. I'll give you this. I'm not an artist, but then heat. The level of water would be here. So there are 2 types of examiners. You will use which one in case you become a teacher you want to be. There's one who will tell you state the observations made when the bottle is heated, when the flask is heated. Then explain. So you will get 2 marks for stating, then for explaining. But for me, I will tell you, when the flask is heated, it is observed that the water drops, then rise. This is water, for example. If the liquid inside is water, or it can be any other liquid, it first drops, then rise. Explain. 1 mark. But the other one will tell you, state the observations, then explain 2 marks. Now explaining is telling us why is the water dropping, then rising. You get to your 1 mark. But stating that now it will drop, then rise, 1 mark. Now explaining is giving a fine details of why a certain phenomenon is taking place. You tell us. You are telling someone who doesn't know. The problem with you are doing exams knowing that it's going to be marked by teachers who knows already what you are. Sometimes you read what a student is writing, you understand what he or she was trying to put across, but because it's an exam, you can't, I can't think for you. You have your brain, I have my brain, everybody to think for himself or herself. So even if I can see what you are actually trying to do, I will not think for you. That is being it's injustice. I cannot think for you. Use your brain to think very well. Whatever you want, that's why we give enough space. No one will ever complain that, the space was not enough. No, we give enough space. You pour your mind on the paper. And again, don't write a lot of unnecessary things. It is a science subject. Put the word and the point across. Now, first of all, here we have 2 observations made in 1, dropping then rising. It dropped because the flask gets heated first and expands. So the water would drop. Now, the heat later on reaches the water or the liquid inside. Then it expands. That is when now it rises. Very simple that way. Don't complicate things. Someone is asked that explain why When a driver applies emergency brakes in a vehicle, all the passengers will surge forward. So the examiner has already again given you the explanation that when brakes are applied in a fast-moving vehicle, a Nissan, all of you will find yourself moving forward as if you are making a dance. So you tell us why. Someone will say because of the first law of Newton's laws of motion, because of inertia. You know, those are guesswork that will earn you nothing. So you explain vividly, just explain very well that when the vehicle was moving at a given velocity, the passengers inside were all in motion. Now, when the brakes were applied, the passengers remained in a state of motion even when the vehicle was coming to stop. That's why they had to surge forward. Then it's over. But telling us because of the first law of Newton's laws of motion, then you know, that one is a casework language. Please, whenever you have to explain, don't guess. Give a description why the passengers are moving forward. Yes. So that is another question known as explain question. Second last type of a question I would like you to get this evening very well is this. Completing diagram question. Completing diagram question. This one you will have to get there. But the good thing is I will give you the topics that mostly specializes to completing diagrams question. They mostly, you know, if I want now to give you a question, if I want to give my students a question to complete diagram, then I will just do this. I know where to go and pick that question. The most common one here is paper 2. They are found in light, where we have light. And remember, we have light in all the 4 forms. Form 1, we have rectilinear propagation of light. Form 2, we have reflection at the curved surfaces. Form 3, we have refraction of light. Form 4, we have dim lenses. All of them talking about light. And the 4 topics, all of them, you can get a question comfortably about completing diagram. I give you a ray of light, complete it for me. Another topic is magnetism, magnetic field pattern. That is where you are required to complete a diagram. I give you a bar magnet, show the magnetic field pattern. That's completing diagram. I will also give, even in magnetic effect of electric current, still you will be required to complete a diagram. Still in paper 2, electricity in form 3. Someone will give you an incomplete setup and then they ask you to fix ammeter or voltmeter somewhere. Just testing your knowledge on current, whether you know that an ammeter has to be placed in series with other electrical equipments, or you know that voltmeter should always be in parallel to the other electrical equipments. Like bulb, like cells, they have to be in parallel with, you know, it's the voltmeter to be in parallel with them. Where else that are you supposed to complete diagram? You're also supposed to complete diagram when you are dealing with uniform circular motion. Someone will tell you, show the you know, where the body will move when the rope is cut. The one we talk about, tangential direction. You know, but now the most common one is light and magnetism. And let me say this, and you have to get it very right. For example, you're dealing with light. This is a shiny surface. This is a normal. This is the incident ray. Complete the diagram. It's very simple. If you just write a line without an arrow, it is, you are the same way as a person who have not. Just put an arrow and get it correctly. Using curved mirrors still. For example, what type of a mirror is that? That's a concave mirror. We have the P, the pole. We have the optical, the principal focus. Then we have the C. Or if it's a lens, it is 2F. Then you are given a ray of light that's parallel and close to the principal axis. So complete the diagram mean, hey, I don't, if it is the only what I've missed. I don't always miss anything. Someone anajiuliza, ni hivyo ndio na missing? No. Now, that one is very wrong because unless I put an arrow, you will not score it. You will not score it. Anyway, look for more questions to complete on light. We have given you the 4 topics of light from Form 1 to Form 4. Now, look at this. I'm not saying you look at how I'm wrapping the board. Look at what I'm about to write. Those are two magnets with North Pole and South Pole facing each other. So complete the diagram to show the magnetic field pattern. I know you know it, but let me give you one trick. Unless you give 3 field lines, you will not score it. At least 3. We have 1, we have 2, we have 3. Then we have those that can get up here. We have those that comes from nowhere. My point is, when illustrating magnetic field pattern, we require at least 3. We require at least 3 field lines so that we can count it as a way of completing diagram. And many ways of completing a diagram. You can be given a way of magnetizing a magnet, then you are supposed to give the polarities. Please check on it. I did a lesson on magnetism. You can search on it there, Ambassador Foundation channel. You will get a lesson on magnetism. I taught, and there is some demonstration. Enhance your knowledge there. But try to know how to give all the magnetic field patterns. Also connect with electric field patterns in electrostatics too. Good. In electrostatics 1, also there is a way of completing diagram. Make the diagram complete as if that was how it was supposed to be, and you will score it very right. Lastly, what we call graphical question. Graphical question. Graphical questions. Graphical question. I will not stay here so much because I have dealt with this. You can check again. There is a lesson entirely for plotting of graphs. So there are 2 ways we can ask you questions in paper 1 and paper 2 concerning graphs. We can give you values so that you can plot the graph. But it is rare. Why? Because in paper 3, we will give you either 1 or 2 graphs. So what we normally do here, we can give you a graph already plotted, then we ask you questions from the graph. Yes, we give you a plotted graph, and the common of this that even came last year in the 2020 KCSE is the photoelectric effect graph. And you have to know how to analyze a graph fully. When you are told to plot a graph, I will not do it here because I have already taught, so you can search for it and see how the graphs are being plotted. One thing you need to know is, leave alone plotting. Everyone must know how to plot a graph. It's not a debate thing. You should know, and I believe you know it. If you don't know, I've told you where to get that information from. Check on how to plot graphs. One thing that I would like you to know is how to deal with a graph. Mostly, if it's a straight line graph, I will ask you to find the slope. And what I will be looking so much on the slope is the units of the slope, because we extract the units from the graph. That is the axis. It is going to enhance you get the units. But the different graphs are approached differently. Thin lenses, mirrors, they have their own way in which we can evaluate. So there is a summary. When you plot a graph of V against U, when you get the gradient, what will that be? It's going to be magnification. So you need to know. And this one, let it be the first thing that you need to know. Every time you're plotting a straight line graph, you have to find the slope. That's what I also want you to know, how to work on the slope. But let me send you, go and check how to plot graphs. Otherwise, if you have any question concerning graphs, please ask. I will answer you. Blessed day. I wish you all the best.